Hello YouTube! Today we are going to talk about static site generation in Next.js. You may be familiar with this term if you ever used Gatsby.js, but if you don't know what this is, think of it as you, instead of serving your pages at runtime, okay, so your user goes to a blog post or your e-commerce website, and instead of you going to the database to get the product they want at runtime, you do that once at build time, and then at runtime, because the product is the same for all the users in your website, you just serve them with the HTML of the product. Okay, you can still enhance that HTML with JavaScript, so it's not purely static as just HTML and nothing else. No, you can enhance that after the fact. And so to show you an example, I built this microphone shop over here. Okay, so this microphone shop is literally building on top of getStaticProps and getStaticPaths, two new methods in Next.js that we will see in 2-3 minutes time. So what do we have here? We have a page with 5 microphones. In reality, in our database, we have 18 microphones, okay? And we are displaying them in pages of 5. So when we do the first load, you can see in our HTML that we receive, we can go over here to the network, refresh the page, and you can see that the HTML we receive is immediately the 5 microphones, okay? So we receive only 5 microphones and nothing else, okay? The last one is this blue Yeti microphone, so this is the one we are seeing. If you navigate to page number 1, for example, or page number 2, you will receive 5 more microphones. And those 5 microphones, once again, this was statically generated, okay? So we are just receiving this HTML already pre-rendered at build time. There is no server-side rendering in this process that I'm showing to you. Everything was built, for example, at build time in Jenkins or TeamCity or Circle CI, whatever build system that you use, okay? So you can also click and navigate, even though the second page I didn't spend too much time doing styling, but you can see that you have a full e-commerce website with just static files. So you don't need to spend a lot of money in servers. Imagine that you have 1 million requests a month to this specific page. If every single time you need to go to your database needs to increase, you need to pay more for your database. While you do it in SSG way, so static site generation, you just serve HTML files from a CDN, for example, so it will be super fast to reach your users. So you can also use this concept in conjunction with normal applications. For example, you can have some pages that are built in this way statically, and you can have another pages, for example, your dashboard for your users, you can be using your traditional way. So this will work really well in applications, or at least in pages that are the same for every single user, okay? So with that in mind, let's now jump into VS Code, where I will show you how to build this application. Over here in VS Code, we have a new Next application. I already went ahead and created this folder with some microphone images, and on top of that, I created this migration file with a database table called microphone with some microphones inside. I think they are 18 microphones with their brand, their model, their price, and a path for the folder over here in the public. Okay, so the next step we probably should do is to make sure that our database is well created. So let's say test migration, for example. It's probably a good name. And what are we going to use? Well, as I said, we are using SQLite, like we used in lesson number 4 and number 5. So if we type SQLite over here and we open SQLite, you will see that we have a method called open. Okay, so we can copy this method over here, and what's happening in this method while I'm typing this is that we are opening the SQLite connection. Okay, so let me just import this from SQLite, And let's do the exact same thing with SQLite 3, because we will need both SQLite and SQLite 3. So now that those two are imported, we can say SQLite.open. So at this stage, our database connection is open. Then what we want to do is to migrate, and let's just say that we want to force that migration to make sure it happens. And now we can test that the migration went through and we have all the microphones in the database doing the typical db.all select star from microphone, right? And if I do console.log, I can do json.stringify microphones null, null, and we will use the typical 4 spaces to indent JSON, okay? And I was about forgetting this await. So now if we run that one and we say test migration, we should now see, oops, this file name doesn't exist. So let me say a proper file name, microphones.sqlite. I think is a good name because we are selling microphones in this application. So I will just expand this one and you can see that we have the 18 microphones that we created. So this is good news, right? The next step we probably want to do is to make sure that we will create a TypeScript model for our microphone. So when we send the microphone to the client and to the server, so it will have types. So how to do that? We will create an interface called microphone, and that interface export interface microphone, and that interface will have an ID, which is a number. We will have a brand, which is a string. We will have a model. I think I created a model, right? Let me just confirm. I can even copy paste this. It's easier. I don't need to remember everything that way. So it's a string. Then we have a price, which is a number, and we have an image URL, which is also a string. So at this stage, we have a model for our microphone. So now we can go to our sources. We can even close this one. Let's just copy this because we will need that bit. And we can even go to our source, pages, and index, which is the root of our domain. So over here, we can say that index will receive index props, will receive some microphones, and it will be a type of microphone array. So we can import this one. And now when we do this, so microphones, we can say that it is of type index props. So over here, whatever microphones we are going to receive, we will have them already typed as microphone array, which is great, right? The next step is we can go again to this SQLite documentation. And if you see, they are teaching us how to export this as a function, because we don't want everywhere to be doing, oh, db.open, passing the name of our database, then reading. It's just too much boilerplate, let's say. So we can come here to our source, and in our source create a new file called OpenDB, probably. It's a good name, isn't it? So we have this OpenDB file, okay, and we can do this uppercase just too much. So this one now, we will point to microphones.sqlite. So it will point to the exact same place that our database we created over here. So this is on point. So the next step, and this is probably something that you will be like, what? So let me just show you why you will probably say what. getStaticProps, and we have getStaticProps, okay? And we say it's async context. And let me just return this for TypeScript to not complain. So we will say props, microphones, and an empty array for now. That way TypeScript doesn't complain at us, okay? So what I said that you will say, what's happening over here? So now in this getStaticProps, we are sure that we will only run on server side. So we can do something crazy like this, db equals to OpenDB, okay? And this OpenDB now, we can just type any query you want over here. So I'm lazy, as you know, so I will come here and I will even copy paste this one, okay? So I will copy paste that one, so we can just say over here, microphones. And if everything goes right, we can say pre-tag, we close the pre-tag and say JSON.stringify, exactly the same that we did before. So microphones null for, but this time it will be in our browser, right? So, oops, I closed this in the wrong order. So, wrong order. Now it's in the right order, right? So let me say npm run dev. And while that one is running, we can even go to our browser just to force it to run. Okay, and while that one is running and compiling and doing its thing, we can just come here and see what's happening over here. We have these getStaticProps, and these getStaticProps will only run on your server side. On top of that, this is quite different from getInitialProps or getServerSideProps, because this one, these getStaticProps, will only run at build time. Okay, it will not run at runtime. This runs at build time, so whatever we send over here to our component, Next will generate some HTML and some JSON with the data we send. And if you want, you are not forced to do this, but if you want, you can put it in a CDN. So you don't even need to have a backend server to serve this first page, for example, which is great. If you have, let's say, more than 18 products in my case, and you have, let's say, 300 products, after we do the second page, we will come back to do some small optimizations, okay? But for now, let's keep it basic. And by now, our Next.js server should be running, and it is. We have this page over here. It's probably not the prettiest page you will ever see, but you have a page over here, and this is the first part. So we were able to show data on our browser. If you open the browser, and let me just increase a bit the font size for you, and we refresh, you can see that the first load is immediately our data over here. So everything is coming from our backend server. It's good. We have that bit done. So what can we do over here now? Well, we can do it a bit nicer, right? So let's just say this. Let's say microphones, so return, let's say a div, and we can delete this one because we don't need that one anymore. And we will say microphones dot map, and over here we will have a microphone. So we can say link, and inside that link, oops, we can have an anchor tag. Let's import this link, and this link is coming from link from next/link, okay? And over here we can say href equals to slash ID, okay? This doesn't exist yet. We will create it in a minute, okay? And over here we can say, oops, okay, slash microphone dot ID, okay? So over here, what we can say is microphone.brand plus microphone.model, okay? And so over here now, we are looping through all our microphones, creating a link tag, and in that link tag, we have inside brand and model. So let's open our browser again. Well, it looks ugly, but at least we have the URLs over here. So if we open that, we already have all the URLs that we are pointing to. So right now, I will just commit what we have over here to our GitHub so you can follow step by step, and I will come back in a second. The next step, even before we start to do some styling with material, we should probably do the second page in order for us to understand how it works. So let's go to the second page, and let's call it, instead of /ID, let's call it /microphone/ID. So we will have to change this in a bit, but let's just go directly here and create a new folder called microphone. And inside that microphone folder, we will call it id.tsx. If you remember from the first part of this series, that square bracket means that we have a dynamic parameter. So over here, we will do export default function microphone detail, for example, and we will return, just to test if it's working, hello world. Okay, so let's go back to our browser and let's say microphone/1. And doing microphone/1, I can see that now I have that hello world over there. It seems like it's working, right? So the next step is for us to say, okay, this microphone detail will need some properties, right? So let's do export interface microphone details, or detail, not details, extends microphone. And microphone is our interface, if you remember. And this interface already has the ID, the brand, the model, etc. Some ESLint tooling will complain about the fact that we have an empty interface over here. If that's the case in the company you are working, you can just do this. Type microphone equals to microphone, and those two are equivalent. Okay, so which one you do, you are good to go. So over here we can say ID, name, brand, not name, brand, model. I don't even know how to type brand anymore. Brand, model, price, and image URL, and it will be of type microphone detail props. Okay, so now that we have this one over here, right, we can even do something nice. Let's say that we have a div and we will create 5 divs, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yes, 5 divs, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we will do ID. And let's just copy this one over here. And let's say brand. The next one is model. And the next one is price. And the next one is image URL, right? So over here, we are printing all the properties from this component. But now it's slightly different than the previous page we did, because the previous page we did was just a single page that we were generating. Right now, if we just do this, export const get static props of getStaticProps, okay? And we do async context, oops, not that one, I'm sorry. A context equals to this one, and we can make this terminal slightly smaller. If we now say, okay, I even know the type of properties that I'm going to return, so I can even say which type of properties I'm going to return. And now that I know which type of properties I'm going to return to my component, we can even say, okay, so props, and the props will be ID, that we can say 1, etc. Even before we do that, we can go to our database once again. So let's say db open database, right? And over here now, we want one microphone alone. We don't want all the microphones. We just want one. So we can do await db.get instead of all, and we do select, I don't know how to type anymore. Select star from microphone where ID equals to 1 parameter, okay? And the parameters that we are going to receive from context, okay, let me show you. ID context dot parameters dot, and in our case, we just care about the ID. And this ID will be of type string, so we need to take care of it. So let's say that we have it as type string, right? So we can do just something really simple like a plus before, and it will do the trick for us. So if you come here to the console and you have, for example, 5, if you put a plus before, it kind of a parse int, okay? So it's just cleaner. So if we have this and we are already returning the ID and we have a microphone over here, so what we can do is we will return the microphone itself. And now this component will have access to the microphone from the database. And that's good if in the context we are already receiving an ID. So in order for us to receive those IDs, we can have export const get static, and this one is not props, is static paths, okay? And I saw that I have a typo over there. So this one is get static paths, and we can also put types over here. In our case, it will be an ID, okay, and it needs to be of type string, because when we go to a URL in our browser, it will be a string. That 3 that you put on /3 or /4, it's a string behind the scenes, right? So let's say async function, okay, and what is the format of what we return here? Okay, the format, it will be, we have a fallback that for now we are going to say false. And over here, we are going to return an array, and this array now inside has an object, and that object has something called params, which are the params we are going to receive there. Okay, and these params, in our case, it will be an ID, and for now we can just say 6 to test the 6. Okay, so we have that one. So what should happen over here? We can even say 2. Okay, ID of 7. So that way we have 2, and you can see, oops, in the wrong place, my bad. So params ID of 7. Okay, so let me just ident this one. So now we have 2 IDs. Let me explain step by step what's going to happen. At build time, Next.js will see that you have a getStaticPaths. Looks inside this getStaticPaths, and it will return these paths one by one to our function called getStaticProps. This getStaticProps will run, and let's say the first time runs with 6. It sends 6 to our microphone detail. Our microphone detail renders with 6. And the second time this function, the getStaticProps, will receive 7. It does the query for 7, gets the microphone with ID as 7, sends the ID as 7 to this component, and this component renders. So we will have 2 HTML generated with JSON files. Let's go to our browser and see what's going on over here. So if we refresh at the moment, we have a 404 for the 1, which is expected because we are only sending 6 and 7. Putting 6, we now see everything from our 6. Putting 7 will also work. Okay? Putting 7 will also work. Putting 8 will now fail, right? And you may ask, well, so we need to send all the IDs we need here? Well, it depends on your application. Imagine that you have an application with, I don't know, 300,000 products, and only 20 of them people are going there every single second. Well, those 20 or 25 or 30 products, you can put them over here, okay? People will see those 20, 30 super fast. And what happens if you want the others to still work? Well, that's why this fallback exists. If we put this fallback to true, look at what will happen. By default, on build time, we are only building still 6 and 7. But at runtime, okay, if I go to, let's say, 10, okay, I put 10 over there and 10 worked. But look at what happens. Let me see if there is something in the terminal to show you. Ooh. So we don't show anything because we don't have any console log. But what's happening is at runtime, Next will run this new value over in the getStaticProps in the server, okay? It will create kinda of a web service for you and sends the JSON properties to you. So if you see on the network, you receive these JSON properties over here, and you receive them as SSG, static site generation, okay? And it's true. For the ones, for example, the number, I think it was 6 and 7, right? If we go to number 7, okay, we also receive, we receive them directly over here. So it's already pre-built. Going to, let's say, 12 or 13, I don't know, 12 is a good one. You see that the preview is empty. After a while, almost immediately after, we do a call to our server. Oops, wrong one. We do a call to our server. Okay, you can even see that it's kinda of a web server created from Next for us, okay? So it will generate this JSON that we can download, and then we put it in our page. When you are using this, there is a property in the router, if you want to use that one, okay, called isFallback. So let me show you. Import use router from next/router, okay? And we can say, oops, my bad. I'm doing too many typos today, I don't know why. So if we say on the use router, we can say router equals to use router, right? And in this router, you can see that we have something called isFallback. And this isFallback will run for all the paths or all the URLs that are not specified on this one. And by the way, I can minimize this one to get us some space. So over here now, we can even say something like if router.isFallback, right? We can say return, and now in the future, not now, in the future, we can do something nicer. But for now, we can just say loading, I'm sorry for the wait. Okay, something like this. It's probably good enough, right? So if we go back over here and we do, for example, let me just refresh, and now let's do 18, okay? So for example, 18, look at this space over here. I can even increase the browser for you. Oops, a bit too much. And when I click on 18, you will see that loading, I'm sorry for the wait. And then when it's done, you see it. If we go to number 6 and number 7, it immediately shows what it has to show. There is no isFallback running over there. The good news is if you read the Next.js documentation, usually now that I went to page number, for example, 18, it already knows about 18, so the next time it's in kind of a cache and it's served immediately to your client. Okay, so over here now, let's just make this fully functional, because at the moment I think we are hard coding it. Yes, we are hard coding it. So what can we do? We can come here and say the following: const microphone IDs, okay? DB, we need to open the DB, okay? Let's copy this bit. I'm so lazy. So I can say microphones all, and I did this over here, right? So now I have all the microphones, and I just need to do one thing: const microphones IDs equals to microphones dot map. And now over here, I want to map my ID to string, okay? Because we need them to be strings, okay? So we will have to do this, I'm sorry. So we will have these IDs as strings, or even better, right? Because we will need them in this specific format. So we can copy this one, just do this, and let me just do another enter. And so we can do return that format, and we will do a.id.toString, right? And now we have these microphone IDs that we can pass over here in the paths. And probably in the future, we can have better namings for these variables, because this probably should be paths. And now if we have paths over there, it's much nicer this way, right? But don't focus too much in naming by itself for now. So if we open this one over here and we forcefully refresh this one, we shouldn't see the fallback anymore. And the fallback is gone. As I said 3 minutes ago, if you have a really, really big website with 300,000, you should use really specifically just the ones you want. Put the fallback to true. I don't know why I opened my command line. Put the fallback to true. And having the fallback to true, your builds will be much faster, because don't forget, all this runs at build time. So if you are putting a lot of stress in your server at build time and you have 300,000 products, even if each product takes only 1 second to run, you are waiting 300,000 seconds, okay? So you need to be careful in what you make running in your server versus what you, well, when I say server at build time, versus what you make to run at runtime. So you need to balance those. The next step we can do is to start to use something like Material UI to make our page look a bit nicer. So in order to do that, we can just kill our process that is running for npm run dev and do npm install --save material UI /core, and I think is material UI /icons. I think so. If not, it will fail and we will fix it. So while this one is installing, and let's minimize it a bit, we can go to our index, and over here now this URL is completely wrong. So this URL should be microphone/id. The same applies over here. So we will have microphone/id. We can even fix this style a bit more, but for now we can ignore it. We can even go to the application that we did in the 5th part of this tutorial, which is over here in part 5. And we can just copy paste 3 files from here, which is the _app, the _document, and the theme.js. If you don't know what those are, you can watch the video of part number 5, but it's literally everything you need in order for you to render server-side your Material UI styles, okay? If you don't put those 3 files over there, your browser will load your application. It will look a bit weird because no CSS is being applied. Then when your app initializes in your browser, it will generate the CSS and it will kind of come back to life, but you don't want to see that flickering, right? So you want your server-side rendering to send immediately everything to your browser, completely rendered and completely final. So in order to have that, we can just open these 3 files, okay? And we can just take the chance while Material UI is being installed. And hopefully I didn't fail in the name of the libraries. Looks like I didn't, which is good. So this one is document.js because at the time we were not using TypeScript yet, but that's the good thing about Next.js. You can have some JavaScript files, some TypeScript files. So in our case, we can have those 3 files as normal JavaScript, okay? So let's go over here and create now, oops, actually, this should be document.js too, and this one should be app.js, right? I renamed the wrong one. Sorry. So this one should be app.js and this one should be document.js, right? Sorry for the typo. So now this is the document and we need one last one, which is the theme component. So let's click on raw, copy paste this one. And I was using, I think, the background of the page as red. I think I was red or some weird color. Yes, it was red. So let's make it white for now. You can then play around and make it look nicer on your own. Okay, so now that we have these 3 documents or those 3 files, this is document, this is app, and this is the theme. So everything seems to be fine. We can start to run this application. And while our server will compile our application, we can just refresh this one. And while that is happening, we can open Material UI documentation. Okay, so Material UI documentation. We can go to components, right? And inside components, the component we care immediately is the header or the nav bar. I think they call it app bar, exactly. And this one, we want it across every single component in our application. So what we can do, oops, my bad, I clicked 3 times, I guess. So what we can do is copy this one, right? Let me just make this to also copy the imports. So we can copy this one into our app.js, because app.js, it will be on every single page. Our components are inside that small component bit, okay? This is kind of the routing of your application. Every time you change component, is only that bit that changes. Everything that's outside is not changing, right? We don't want it static, we want it fixed to be always fixed at the top of the screen. And now we can just copy paste blindly all these imports, shall we? Let's do this. So let's just blindly copy all those imports. Let me just see if we don't have any class name over here. Yes, we have, obviously. And we don't care about this one as well. And instead of news, we can call it microphone shop, okay? Or some nice name that we can think of. So let's remove this one. And now going to our browser, we should refresh. Yeah, we should refresh, and now we have a microphone shop. Okay, so this is looking too big, but because I have the zoom for you guys. Okay, so now it's time probably to remove the zoom, and we don't need zoom anymore. Okay, we can even do something which is to have the non-dense version of it. We can have a variant as dense. Okay, and we can say where is variant. I think is in the toolbar variant to say dense, and so it will look a bit smaller. Okay, so if we do this, as you saw, the bar is now a bit smaller. We can even remove this, but we can keep it over there. Now we need to make our body a bit to the bottom. So let's just put a bit of a box, and a box in a Material UI, it's quite commonly used to do what I'm going to do over here. So I will put margin top of, let's say, 8 times 8. Yeah, basically every single unit of those is 8 pixels. Okay, if you don't change, if you change it, it can be more or less, but by default is 8 pixels. So what we are saying is we are multiplying 8 pixels by 8, so we will have 64 pixels of padding to the top. Okay, so let me just import that box from Material UI /core/box. And this is uppercase actually. Okay, so that one will compile, and now when we go back to this microphone, we should have now the microphone with a small space. So this is starting to look a bit nicer. So the next one we can look for is the card component, because the cards probably will look nice in our pagination. So let's come to card, and let's see a card that looks nice for us. These ones with the lizard, probably they look good for us. So let's click here, and let's do kind of the same thing we did before. So let's copy this card. Actually, we don't need the actions. We can remove the actions immediately after, but for now, let's keep the actions. Let's just close everything because I'm a bit overwhelmed by the amount of things I have on the screen. So what we can do is I can put everything inside here, right? And now I can just go to here, copy paste all the imports, just TypeScript stops complaining to us. Okay, so we do this, and now TypeScript, if it's well behaved, should no longer complain to us, right? Let me just cancel these organize imports, and it's still loading. Save, please. Okay, so it's saved. We can just do this, and TypeScript is no longer complaining. We can just remove the card actions because I don't think we will need card actions. Okay, so we can just format these. Let's go to our browser just to see how it looks like. Okay, so let's go to our browser, click over here and refreshing, and everything, oops, I'm in the wrong place. I want to go to the list. So if I click over here, I should now go to the list. And in the list, we should have a bunch of cards, I think 18, one per each of our components, which that's what we have, okay? And the cards are over here, so it's looking okay-ish, okay? So what can we do after this moment? Well, we already have the cards, right? And if we have the cards, the next step is to start to use, for example, the image as the image we are receiving from our microphone. So microphone.image URL. So we have that one. We can say something like the halt, and the halt for us, it can be the microphone brand plus the microphone model. So let's say that we have microphone.model plus, we can put a dash or a space, microphone.brand. Actually, it should be the opposite, but for our test probably is just good enough. And we can say the same thing for the title, okay? So we can say the same exact thing for the title. The next thing we can probably do is to come here, and actually now we should really change this because this is the titles, brand and model, okay? And so we don't have any description, but we can just keep this kind of lorem ipsum over there. It's not lorem ipsum, but we can leave it over there like if it is lorem ipsum, okay? So we have some text to look for. So we have this looks fine for now. So if we open that, we have the microphones kinda there, okay? Which is not too bad, they are there. We can then take a bit of time to resize the photos and do those things, but for now they look okay-ish. Let me just do something, which is probably putting a bit more height on our components. So with 200 it should look slightly better, right? And yes, it does slightly better. Then we can take a time to render or re-render this slightly better, but for now I think it looks good. Now the next thing what we want to do, probably we want to put two side by side, and in order to do that in Material we can use something like a grid. And so let's use the grid, and once again I will show you that we can do almost everything we just copy pasting from Material, okay? So if we have a grid, we can just go over here, and let me just do this, and then I will update that one. So if we go over here, I can do a grid. Inside the grid we can make a container, right? Oops, I did a mistake. We can have a grid. Instead of this div we can put the grid, right? We will close the grid at the bottom instead of this div. Oops. And we close it over there, right? And so now we can just copy one of those grids, right? And delete all of that. And now this grid is in the right place. So we just need to close the grid after the link. We close the grid. So now we have everything that we may need for the grid. Let's just import this one from Material UI. So it will stop complaining in a second, as soon as VS Code understands that we did the import. And so we can now format, and we will have a grid. This grid probably should be XS12, which makes sense, and we can do SMS6. And I think it will be quite okay. We can say a bit more spacing. And now we can go to our browser, refresh, and now we should have two side by side, right? Let's just wait for our browser to refresh. And now we have two side by side. So it's starting to look a bit nicer. As I say, you can make it look even nicer if you want to. I will not touch much more on that because then it will become a Material UI tutorial, okay? But I can do a commit at the end of this with a nicer home page, so you can play around with this home page, okay? But for now, before we finalize the video, I just want to show you, you remember when we spoke about the fallback, and I said immediately at the beginning that if you had 200 pages or something like that, it would be super nice for us to have pagination. Well, if you want to do that, I will teach you how to do that pagination just in a second. Let me just commit this for you to have this initial one, and then I will teach you how to do pagination. In order for us to do pagination, we can open our index.tsx, and we can think that this getStaticProps will have as well a getStaticPaths like we did for the second page, okay? But this time, instead of iterating through the elements, that getStaticPaths will iterate through the pages, okay? So this getStaticProps will just receive the current page we are on. So we can do this. Const current page is equals to the context.params.current page, okay? And we can say that this is of type string, and this can be actually undefined as well in the initial page, okay? If we just go to the root of our repository, it will, I always say repository, sorry, to the root of our domain, it will be undefined. So we need to say current page number is equals to current page or 0, okay? And now we can say plus at the beginning, okay? So we have this, and now the next step we need to do is, okay, we need to have the minimum and the max of our page. Let's say that we have pages of 5 elements each. We have 18 microphones. So if we have 5, we have a page between 1 and 5, another one 6, 10, 11, 15, and 15 to 18. So we will have 4 pages in total. So we need to grab the minimum of the index and the maximum of the index of that page. And that's easily done this way. We can do current page number times, okay, 5 in this case, because we will have pages as 5. And this 5, you can even store it probably in your database or somewhere else. For now, I will keep it there hard-coded. For the maximum, we will have current page number plus 1, okay, times 5. So let's do a small exercise. If our current page is 0, because we will have the pages as 0 index based, if the first page is 0, the minimum will be 0 up to 5. And we want 1 up to 5. So we can say in our query bigger instead of bigger and equals. And for the maximum, it will be 5. For the page number 1, which is in reality page number 2, we will have 1 times 5, which is 5 for the minimum. And for the maximum, it will be 2 times 5, which is 10. So we can do this over here, where ID is bigger than one parameter and ID smaller or equal than the parameter. So the parameters will be min and max. And I think this makes sense at the moment. So let's let's format this one. We have the minimum and the maximum being used over there. I think it makes sense. So let's just run our application. And when we go to the first page should only show 5 elements to us. Let's open this over here, refresh. And while that one is refreshing, we can just come here just to look around to see if we didn't forget anything, because this one can be string or an array of strings. So when it reaches over here, we are casting it to be just a string. And then if it is not defined, we say it's 0, and then we do the plus again, the trick, to parse to integer. So it looks like it's okay, right? Let's go to our browser, and it's still compiling, so we leave it over there, and we can start to create another page. And this one, we can call it current page. Current page is a good name, okay? So we will have a current page. I created this as a folder, not a folder. So as a file, current page.tsx. So just for this to compile, we can say function some component. It really doesn't matter for now. So we can say div hello. Our dev server also failed. So let's see why is our dev server failing. We can see, cannot read property current page of undefined. And he is absolutely right, because these parameters, because we don't have getStaticPaths yet, they are not defined. So we can do that small question mark, and so it just goes forward. Okay, so when this one builds, we can come here, refresh, and it will build eventually. We should only see 5 microphones. And yes, we just see 5 microphones. So what we want to do now is, if we do 2, for example, which is page number 2, we should be able to navigate to the second page. Now it will fail because we just return hello. That's what we have over there, right? So what can we do on this page? Well, we already have this component and these getStaticProps. They are working exactly as we want. So why don't we do something smart over here? So let's just do this. Let's import our component. Let's also import our getStaticProps, okay? And we can do the following: export default index, okay? We can also export our getStaticProps, okay? And the only thing we need to do over here now is getStaticPaths, okay? And we can say getStaticPaths, which is good. It looks good. We can say that it is asynchronous, and this will be a function. this will be a function of that type. So let's just import this bad boy over here, and let's just return, for an example, like 2 pages. So let's return an array. Let's say that the fallback is false for now. The paths, it's an array with params, and let's say that I think the parameters we are expecting here is current page. This name needs to be the same, okay? And so we can come here, say current page, and pass the number 2, okay? So when this builds, this will build for page number 2. So let's try and see if this makes sense at all. So page number 2, I can click refresh, and we got the second page of microphones. If we go to page number 1, for example, it will now fail because page number 1 is not even defined. So we get a 404. It looks good. It really looks good. So what can we do over here? We can just leave it like that, or we can just do the query from the database. Let's just do the query from the database. At least you will have something fully functional. So I could stop here, but let's just do the query from the database. It's probably better. So let's do const db equals to await open database, right? Let's import that one. Okay, we import that one, and we do await dot, oops, not await dot get, db dot get, select count star, and we can call it total. So we immediately destruct this total, okay? And then we say from microphone. I don't even know how to type microphone anymore. So we get the total of our items. So what else can we do with this total? Well, with that total, we can say, okay, we have 18 microphones. So let's see how many pages can we have. So we can say number of pages is equals to mat.sale of total divided by 5. Okay, and why do I have that mat.sale? Okay, if we have 15 divided by 5 is 3. Okay, if we have 18 divided by 5 is 3.6 or something like that. I didn't do the count, the math, sorry, but it will be probably 3.6. So even if we use a normal round, it will work. But imagine in a case that we have 16, which is 3.2 or something like that. If we have the math.round, it will say that we only have 3 pages, which is not what we want. We want to have 4 pages because we want to see all our elements. So if we have those number of pages, what can we do immediately after this one? Well, we can pick this one and convert those number of pages in something like this, okay? So how can we do that? Well, we can create it this way. Const paths equals to array, and when we do new array, okay, array, yes. When we do an array, the array over here receives the number of elements that we want to create. So if I do this, it sees, you can see that the array length, and the array length for us, if we have 3 pages, we can pass it over here, okay? And so now what we need to do is to fill the array with something, and I will explain you why we need to fill the array with something. So if, oops, I put airplane mode for some reason. So if we go over here and we do array of 3, for example, we have the array with empty, okay? And this is from somewhere else, ignore that one, okay? So what can we do? We can say fill, and now that we fill the array with something, we can do map, and from this map, we can say, okay, I ignore the value, but I care about the index, okay? And so caring about that index, we can do the following. We can say that we will return parameters, and inside those parameters, we will have a current page. Oops, we will have a current page, and that current page will be index to string. Okay, so doing that and opening this one, we can see that we have page 0, 1, and 2. But if you remember, we said that the pages will start on 0, which is fine. But the page number 0, it's already there. We don't want to touch that page, right? Because we don't want 2 different URLs to the same page. That will be bad for your SEO. So what we want to do is to add 1 and 2, but not 0. So what can we do? We can come here. Okay, let me go back to this over here. Let me just copy what we were doing over there, because it's entertaining what we were doing. So we can go over here, paste that code, and what we can do is, okay, so we do +1, and at the same time we do +1, we do -1 over here. Oops, and this one should be the number of pages. Otherwise I would be hard coding it. So now the number of the paths over here should just match 1 and 2. And this is exactly what we want. We should have 1, 2, and 3. Let's compile, go back to our page, and now page number 1 is there. Page number 2 should be there as well. And page number 3 should also be there, right? Oops, I clicked enter again, my bad. So we should go to page number 3, and page number 3 only has 3 items at the moment, because it's those 3 Shure microphones. And by now you probably see that I'm seeing a lot of microphones. But if we go back to 0, 0 should be a 404, because we don't want the user to navigate through this one. But if they do like that, they will see the first page. As an homework, I will leave for you to start to put a button here to say page back and page forward, because now you know the basics. You just need to, on the button, to check in which is the current page. You need to pass also the total of pages, and checking the current page for the 0, it's easy. So for the back button is easy. You can just check if the current page is not 0. If it is not 0, you can have a back button. For the next page, you just need to check that this current page +1 is still not bigger than the number of total pages. And you can have a button here to go back and a button over there to go forward, or at the bottom if you prefer. It really doesn't matter. So I really hope this video was super helpful to you. I think this is a really nice feature from Next. As I said at the beginning, I think some people will probably move away from Gatsby to Next.js just because of this feature, because you don't need to have any knowledge of GraphQL or something like that. So you can also use these type of features with get server-side props or get initial props. So imagine some pages of your application are super static and you only change them at build time. Well, you can just build some of the pages like this. The other ones, you still do them in the old approach, which is not bad. It's just the older approach. You do it that way, and you can have an hybrid application where some pages are static, some other pages are dynamic. You can even have pages, for example, internal pages in your application after you have login. So you don't need to have the Google SEO or something like that. You can even have those pages just doing a normal HTTP GET over here at the top. Let me just close this one, where you just do, for example, if you are using SWR, which we already have a video on the channel, you can do a call over here, right? You can have data equals to use SWR of /some endpoint. And you can just do that, even though this will run on your client's browser at runtime, not at build time in your Jenkins or Travis CI or whatever you use, Circle CI, whatever. But this is super powerful. It can save a lot of processing power in your environment. So I really hope this was helpful. If you enjoyed this video, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you again next week. Bye bye.